Morning. The committee will come to order. As Veterans Day approaches this Saturday, this committee is reminded of the incredible contributions those who have served have made to our country. Our nation's veterans have made extraordinary sacrifices, put their lives on the line, and kept our country safe. Not only are they our fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers and friends, they are our heroes. Today, we will examine the Small Business Administration's Office of Veterans Business Development and ask ourselves, what can we do better for them? America's military men and women defend and protect our country, and they also learn many real-world skills needed to operate a successful business. Leadership and discipline are instilled in every soldier from the day they start basic training. That is why many veterans choose to start a small business when they return home from service. However, veteran employment levels have historically fallen behind those of their non-veteran counterparts. This is often due to the difficulties veterans face when transitioning from the military to the workforce. Research shows that veterans face many barriers to employment that their peers do not, such as potential employers' difficulty in understanding a military resume or the result of a service-connected disability, for example. We can and must do better for our veterans. The SBA's Office of Veterans Business Development was established to help bridge this gap. They offer training and counseling programs, monitor federal procurement for veteran-owned small businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and assist with access to capital. However, as we know, there is always room for improvement, especially when it comes to our men and women in uniform. Today, I hope that this hearing will reveal some of the ways we can get our veterans back into the workforce. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize some of my fellow colleagues who have served or are still serving in our military. Mr. Knight, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Bacon, Dr. Marshall, thank you for your service to our country. Unfortunately, a number of those folks aren't here today, but as always happens, we have a number of committees going on at the same time. We, again, want to thank them for their service. And I would now like to yield to the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this important hearing regarding the SBA resources available to veterans. To help honor the sacrifices of our military in light of Veterans Day, this hearing gives us the opportunity to highlight veterans' economic contributions. Over the last century, these brave Americans have fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Korea, and Europe for not only our freedoms, but for the freedoms of others. We owe them a debt we can never fully repay. At minimum, we can help afford them the opportunity to build a new life after their many years of military service. Veterans possess unique skills and experience that make them ideally suited to entrepreneurship. Studies have shown that it is not the military training, but the personality traits and leadership attributes of our veterans that make them such strong business professionals. This is evidenced by the rate in which veterans start small business compared to the wider population. For instance, the share of young veterans business owners has grown, while the rate of non-veterans owners has dropped in recent years. While veterans clearly have a knack for entrepreneurship, we must ensure they have the support they need to start and grow their businesses, whether it is help creating a business plan, navigating the procurement process, marketing a new product, or identifying international trade opportunities. The SBA's Veterans Entrepreneurial Programs provide an array of services to help small firms flourish. One of the most important tools we have to accomplish this mission is the Service Disabled Veterans-Owned Small Business Procurement Program. In 2016, this initiative awarded more than 200,000 contracts worth over $16 billion to SDB small firms. This amounts to twice as many contracting actions as we saw in 2015. These awards accounted for over 3.9% of all small business eligible federal contracts, meeting the statutory goal of 3% for the fourth year in a row. This accomplishment should be applauded. At the same time, we should note that we can do much better. There has been a decrease by 0.22% from 2015 to veteran-owned small businesses. Given that entrepreneurship remains a promising career path for many of these men and women, programs like the ones we are discussing today are critical to reducing the unemployment rate for veterans, which remains close to 6% for the most recent generation who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Recognizing the specialized need of veterans, the SBA has the Office of Veterans Business Development, whose mission is to maximize the availability, applicability, and usability of all administration small business programs for veterans, service-disabled veterans, reserve component members, and their dependents or survivors. These are a range of SBA entrepreneurial development programs targeted at our veterans, most notably the Veterans Business Outreach Centers, which serve over 600,000 clients each year. With respect to all of these programs, it is vital that taxpayer resources are being used wisely and to maximum effect. That is why this committee has long pushed for clear metrics and accountability, especially among the newer pilot programs at SBA. However, promoting efficiency and ending duplications should not be an excuse to underinvest in entrepreneurial development. I think I speak for all the members here today in saying that we will do whatever it takes to help all veterans overcome the challenges they face in today's economy. I look forward to hearing how the SBA programs are helping meet the needs of veterans and what we can do to improve them. I thank the witness for being here today, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gentlelady yields back. And if committee members have opening statements prepared, I'd ask that they be submitted for the record. And now I'll take just a moment to review our timing rules with our one witness today, Ms. Carson. We operate under the 5-minute rule, and there's some lights in front of you. The yellow light will come on when you got a minute to wrap up, and then the red light will come on, and that means your 5 minutes are up. And if you could stay within that, we'll give you a little bit of leverage there if you need it. But we appreciate you being here today, and I'd now like to introduce our very distinguished witness here this morning, Ms. Barbara Carson, who's the Associate Administrator for the SBA's Office of Veterans Business Development. She also oversees the office's staff and their programs, including counseling, access to capital, and federal contracting for veteran, service member, and military spouse-owned small businesses. And especially significant as Ms. Carson is a colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserve and has served for over 20 years as an active duty and reserve officer. We want to thank you not only for being here this morning, but especially for your service to our country. We greatly appreciate that. And without further ado, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Chabot and Ranking Member Velazquez and distinguished members of this committee, good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity to testify today on the U.S. Small Business Administration's continuing efforts to empower veteran entrepreneurship and small business ownership through programs and policies that optimize SBA services for veterans, service members, and their spouses too. I'm honored to work at the SBA and to empower veterans to be the next great generation of entrepreneurs. As a service member currently in the Air Force Reserve and the spouse of an Air Force officer for over 20 years so far, I know the challenges and the rewards that come with the military life, and I know firsthand that entrepreneurship can be an incredibly rewarding endeavor for people like me. While I served on active duty and as a reservist, I have followed my husband through multiple moves and found that it was challenging to maintain my professional career and my own interests. While stationed in Okinawa, Japan, a veteran friend and I did start our own small enterprise. It was a fulfilling experience for me that I share with other veterans and military spouses to empower them to do what they love every day. It's that opportunity for their success that drives my service at SBA. On behalf of Administrator McMahon, I am pleased by the opportunity to represent SBA's Office of Veterans Business Development. More than half of my team has served in uniform, and we are proud to serve veteran entrepreneurs ourselves. In addition to our program office staff, I'd like to thank and recognize the veterans that are currently working at SBA. We are fortunate to have almost 850 veterans employed at SBA now, and we're lucky to have these veterans in public service. In fact, Administrator McMahon, at this very moment, is hosting a recognition ceremony for these veterans at SBA. Mr. Chairman, thank you and the committee for hosting this hearing today. The timing is perfect as we head into Veterans Day. This is an opportunity to highlight some of the great things that are happening at SBA, thanks to your support and also the incredible talent and dedication of my colleagues in the field offices, as well as resource partners around the country. These include the Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and their increased participation in transition assistance, which is where SBA serves transitioning service members and military spouses through the Boots to Business program, and veterans of all eras through Boots to Business Reboot. Outreach is incredibly important, and we work hard to ensure that veterans are aware of and connected to SBA resources. These include 3 outreach grants focused on service-disabled veterans, women veterans, and veterans seeking opportunities in federal procurement. In addition, SBA conducts robust military community outreach. By participating at the national level and regional as well, and by leading SBA's National Veterans Small Business Week, we ensure that veterans know about the success that they can achieve in small business ownership and demonstrate how SBA can get them started. There are 2.5 million veteran-owned small businesses in the United States at this time, and as we honor them this Veterans Day and thank them for their sacrifices, we at the SBA want all veterans and military families to know about those resources that are available to them, and to help them follow their military service with small business ownership. Each year, more than 200,000 veterans connect with the SBA and its resources to start or expand small businesses. Many veterans report that owning a small business is a way to continue their mission of serving others, first their country and then their community. And we as a nation continue to benefit from these contributions that they're making. Veteran-owned small businesses generated over $1.4 trillion in sales last year, making them an integral part of our nation's economy and our identity. Research tells us that veterans do make great entrepreneurs. Military experience equips them with leadership and management skills that they can apply to their civilian endeavors. I thank you again for this opportunity to be here today, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes to begin the questioning. Something that we hear in this committee a lot is the significance, the importance of access to capital. It's one of the greatest challenges that a lot of small businesses face, veterans as well, and that's one of the reasons the ranking member and I introduced the Veterans Entrepreneurship Act a couple years back, which was signed into law by the president, and basically what it does is to waive the upfront loan guarantee for 7A loan programs, the guarantee for veterans and military spouses under the SBA Express program. And in addition to waiving this fee, could you discuss what your office, the Office of Veterans Veterans Business Development, does to help entrepreneurs to find financing that they need to create their dream, to create this business?
You're exactly right, sir, and thanks for the question on access to capital. That is a challenge for veteran entrepreneurs, and unfortunately, that's not unique to aspiring entrepreneurs. It continues to be a problem. Many veteran small business owners do rely on personal credit and savings to start, and that's not a bad thing. That's bootstrapping. But many, to be successful and sustain, need that capital. And I am grateful for the Veteran Entrepreneurship Act of 2015 has been very meaningful. Millions of dollars saved in fee relief that has allowed folks to keep more working capital in their businesses and perhaps even hire others on their teams rather than paying fees. Beyond that, we have recognized since more robust participation in transition assistance that a 7A loan or 504 may be a little further down the road for many of these new entrepreneurs. And I have great hope for the successes we're seeing in the Community Advantage program and also microloans for getting those smaller amounts of capital, building that great record of credit that will help them be more prepared to take on growth through the 7A and 504 programs.
Thank you very much. In the past, the SBA has stated that they are working to streamline efforts across their entrepreneurial development programs. How has the SBA streamlined efforts, and how does this affect veteran entrepreneurs particularly?
There are a couple ways that we have streamlined. One, in the entrepreneurship programs, which I can speak to directly, and particularly in Boots to Business, is making it easier for people to find us, so increased outreach, and making it more easy for them to activate by finding that once I know about you, I can connect with the programs that are meaningful. So we have introduced new technology in the past 2 years, trying to better capture a veteran as soon as they know about us, get them to a program, and then ensure that they find the other resources across SBA to connect and take part in programs. That is one. And another is recognizing our unique place in the ecosystem of resource partners and really understanding that Veterans Business Outreach Centers are focused on that transitioning service member and their spouse.
Great. Thank you very much. And finally, many federal agencies, namely the Departments of Veterans Affairs, Labor, and Defense, have launched veteran assistance programs similar to those available at the SBA. In your view, how do SBA's programs meet a need that is currently unmet by other federal programs, and how does the SBA engage with other agencies to see if duplication can be reduced? And that's one of the, I'd say, the greatest inefficiencies in the federal government is the duplication. What can you do about that?
I am confident that our interagency collaboration between Department of Defense, Department of Veteran Affairs, Labor, and SBA is optimized. We have seen incredible unique capabilities contributed, and we are doing more referral among ourselves to our programs. One example is through transition assistance. I think that veterans and service members now know that what DOL provides is very unique and different than what SBA is providing. For example, I do want those American Job Centers. That's going to be the talent pool from where small business owners can hire new employees. At the Veteran Affairs, I'm very well connected to the vocational rehabilitation and employment services for those who are eligible for those services for self-employment. And I'm ensuring that VA knows they do not have to train people on business plans. They are referring them to our SBA resource partners. That's the way it should work. We have a unique place in the government for small business and entrepreneurship, and these agencies recognize it and send them to us, and I do not perceive that we are duplicating at this time, sir.
Thank you very much. My time's expired. The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Carson, I commend your work to extend the reach of the B-Box through instituting local initiatives such as B-Box on the reservation. Given the recent natural disasters that have taken place in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, do you consider looking at that and to assist veterans present in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands?
The role of the Veterans Business Outreach Center, as you said, yes, has their primary mission is to serve transition assistance programs and the members that are eligible for that. But that local connection is valuable, as you've said, and they have contributed to training through both Boots to Business and Reboot in Puerto Rico. The Veterans Business Outreach Centers this past year, for the first time, have been a part of the continuity of operations plan of the Small Business Administration. And while they won't have a leading role in that effort, yes, they are engaged, and they do have a significant role that they can play in Puerto Rico.
So going forward, will you be able to provide to us any data as to veterans in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands that have been served through these veteran centers?
Absolutely, I can.
Yeah. So Veterans Business Outreach Centers assist veterans with numerous areas on business planning and management. How often does the SBA refer veterans to these centers, and do you have any data available for referral to B-Box versus the other veteran-specific programs?
Thank you for that question. It's a valuable one to me and one that we've put a lot of time into. And just recently, I know it's just a form, but these are important because it's hard to gather data without having a way to collect appropriately. And so for the first time ever, Veterans Business Outreach Centers are on SBA's Form 641. And we have also put on information where a client can say that where they were referred from. However, all of this is voluntary, so we are also expecting our Veterans Business Outreach Centers and have made requests through the other resource partners that they identify referrals, and not only the referral, but the follow-up. That is one part of our effort through a new management system. We are using a platform because I recognize now with the transition assistance population particularly, small business ownership may not be their very next step. And I need to know that I connected with them here and I have a way to stay engaged through their process of actually going to business creation, getting a loan, and getting that federal contract.
Do you have enough resources to keep up with the veteran client demand?
That continues to be a challenge with just the Veterans Business Outreach Centers. There are 20 around the United States at this time, 50 counselors, and you see that they serve 55,000 this year. I recognize, as I have said, though, we serve a unique place in the ecosystem, particularly with transition assistance, which is their statutory mission first and foremost. I want transitioning service members to know of all the resource partners. So those referrals are important, and that's the way that I do stretch that value of the veteran program.
So do you feel that there is a need to increase those 20 outreach centers
At this
so
time,
that we could touch and provide opportunities? After all, we are so grateful for the service that they have provided.
At this time, there is a great opportunity to increase our service through Veterans Business Outreach Centers. And we've done the analysis to see where we would put additional if we had.
Is that reflected in the budget submission?
I, at this time, had not submitted that in the budget request. We have just completed our analysis for fiscal year 17, which was very instrumental in determining exactly what we need.
We discuss access to capital, access to credit. And so what are you doing in terms of increasing venture capital opportunity for some of the businesses, veteran business owners who do not want to acquire debt financing, or maybe that is not the answer for them? What are you doing in that respect?
Thank you for that question. Primarily, I do rely on working with my colleagues in the Office of Innovation and Investment to find opportunities. And I do have a member of my team where that is, he leads us in that portfolio and recognizing opportunities there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer, who's the vice chairman of this committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Ms. Carson, for your work to help our veterans be able to assimilate back in society and be able to have an opportunity, the American dream they've helped protect and enable the rest of us to enjoy as well. I want to follow up on some of the points that the chairman made with regards to the duplication of efforts here. There was a letter from SBA dated August 2013 to the committee. It indicated that the SBA had created 22 programs without statutory authority from Congress. Of the 22, 3 fell under OVBD, Boots to Business, Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship, and the SBA Veteran Pledge Initiative. And apparently since 2013, SBA continues to introduce more programs that are apparently unauthorized. And while I support what they're doing here, do you argue the fact that you are unauthorized to do some of this?
Sir, thank you for your question. And I do receive direction through statutory guidance, and it is my role to implement it. And I have done just that. I believe that the programs mentioned, there are several in the veterans portfolio. I can't speak for the rest of the agency, but I am providing transition assistance and also outreach programs as indicated by statutory guidance.
Okay. When you initiate a new program, what's the process you go through?
I first refer to the statutory guidance, which in this one case for Boots to Business is the authority to provide transition assistance and participate in that.
What initiates the process? So is there something or some incident or some group that comes to you and say, we have a void here? And do you then go to the other agencies? I mean, the chairman indicated there's 3 other agencies out there that do the same thing. And so I'm not trying to be negative about what you're doing. I'm just looking at the concern that we have here of the overlap that would seem to be there if you have 4 different agencies that provide opportunities for enhancing the veterans' abilities to get business up and running. And yet you have 22 different programs here that were created by your own letter. How can you justify continuing to put more and more programs on the books whenever there seems to be a plethora of programs, not only in your agency, but others as well?
Thanks for the opportunity to respond. I will respond with just Boots to Business because that's a clear example. In 2014, we did receive an appropriation that directed SBA to fund and execute a transition assistance program. Happens to be called Boots to Business. It is not duplicated anywhere else in federal government, but you are correct in saying that 4 agencies do participate in transition assistance by each providing their unique contributions to that service member's transition in one program.
Okay, the president has an initiative right now for all agencies to review programs in each of the agencies. Where are you in the process with reviewing your programs?
We are pretty far down the road. We've done a great job of optimizing where we can, looking for places where even within our agency, we may be doing similar things that we could better optimize by
Can you give me
having
an
one.
example?
Yes, we're looking at resource partners, for example, and the Veterans Business Outreach Center is one that I've looked at. So the differentiation, I can clearly explain now. I think and I hope to demonstrate that we are acting on that differentiation.
What kind of metrics do you use to measure the success of a program so it can continue, or needs to be changed, or needs to be eliminated?
I feel confident that what we're measuring for our programs are consistent across the agency, both in how we define a data field and that we value its relevance so that it's meaningful. For the Veterans Business Outreach Centers in particular, we are looking at their reach. So outreach is important. The thing that I hear most frequently when I connect with veterans and military families is that they didn't even know these resources existed for them. That is something that is very valuable. Business starts are, of course, that's the mission of our agency, is to start and sustain businesses. That's another metric that we measure.
Okay, well, it would seem to me that not just starts, but the sustaining of that entity. Of course, you can never, it's always a roll of the dice sometimes on this, and so I understand there's going to be some successes and some failures, but I would hope that the analysis of the entity that the individual you're going to help and the entity they're going to create is something that's taken into account so that we can make sure we help people rather than hurt them. Get somebody involved in a business that they can't be successful in is probably more hurtful than saying no to them. I've been in the business for 35 years of loaning money to people, and sometimes you do them a favor when you say no. So, but I appreciate all you've done to help our servicemen and women to be able to acclimate themselves back into our society and be productive citizens in a different way, and to enhance their ability to be able to enjoy the successes that they have helped us with. So thank you so much, Ms. Carson.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Evans, who's the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Tax, and Capital Access, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Pleasure to meet you. Your Boots to Business program. I'm very much interested in really how has that move proceeded at this particular point?
At this particular point, is there anything in particular, sir?
Well,
an overview?
Overview, yes.
Okay. Just in this past year, for example, 17,000 service members at installations around the United States and across the globe have received this entrepreneurship training. It is provided through our resource partners and the local district offices and business experts. So, for example, we want to have, as you see in my written testimony, team teaching. The purpose of SBA's participation in transition assistance is to introduce service members and military spouses to all of the resources available to them in this administration. And that is exactly what we do.
How successful are you in terms of a measuring stick at this point? Were you able to give some kind of response about how effective has it been?
We have several different evaluation activities going on at this moment. The one instrument that I have at this point is a survey that has been approved by OMB to check in with participants at the 1-year point. So as a survey, as you know, there are some limitations. I only can assess those who have responded. And at this time, about 34% of those who respond to the survey have started a business. And you'll see that we use other indicators as well to see how did people feel about their ability to take that next step once completing the course is another assessment that we've done, which is provided in the written testimony.
Do you sort of target the program in certain communities, rural, urban? Any special way do you target it?
Boots to Business is targeted to military installations where there is the transition GPS program offered at that installation. That's its purpose.
One other thing I observed in terms of Mississippi State University, Lean for Main Street. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, there was a competition at SBA 2 years ago to use lean startup ideology to see if we could do that for Main Street businesses and not just the high-tech businesses. It was a successful effort, indicated by the fact that Mississippi State University was chosen to take part in Boots to Business follow-on training, which is meaningful. If I may, sir, for just a moment, talk to you about follow-on training.
Yes.
For those, and as was mentioned by the Congressman just a moment ago, not everybody should start a business right away. It may not be the very next step, and we are working on how to measure that. Saving time and treasure until you're ready to start a venture is an important and good outcome. But for those who are ready to take the next step, we're offering service members 3 opportunities. One is the Mississippi State option, another is a combination effort from Syracuse and Cornell University, and the last one that we emphasize just as strongly is connecting with your local resource partner. That's for people who really think this could be my very next step.
From an evaluation standpoint, sort of like the same question I asked.
Thank you, sir. We have just finished 1 quarter of performance for those new grantees, and we're evaluating that, and I should have some information to provide within 30 days, as they are all new.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're back to balancing my time.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Kelly, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Carson, for being here today, and thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for a shout out from Mississippi State University. It's not in my district, but it's about that far from it. They're doing great things at Mississippi State University with their VBOC there. They're committed to our veterans as a university. I know the president personally is committed to that, and all the members there. I think they're doing a lot of great things, and so I want to thank y'all for having that in Mississippi. My first question is, of all the SBA's loan programs which are kind of targeting veterans, which one are most popular for our veteran entrepreneurs?
Popular and useful, right? Yes, sir. Thank you, Congressman, for the question. We have the most participation in the 7A program, but there has been an almost 30% increase in just the last year in veteran participation in the Community Advantage program, which is what I would hope to see as we are starting more businesses coming out of Boots to Business. They start at the ideation and creation stage. Community Advantage or microloan is maybe a good place to start, but I'm seeing good participation in 7A.
And this is probably maybe a little off topic, but I'm very concerned about our veterans who are currently serving in the Guard and Reserve. We're about to mobilize somewhere between 3,500 and 4,200 Mississippians in the next year or so. Many of those are small business owners. What are we doing in the gap, and how are you counseling these veterans when they come in to get capital? When on a 3 to 5 year cycle, you may be redeployed. So it's very difficult to maintain that business. What training or what programs do you currently know of that we have that reach out and touch when those veterans are deployed, whether it's their wife or mother, father, daughter, brother, whoever that takes care of that? What programs do we have that kind of helps them through that process?
Again, our connection with Department of Defense is important here, as many of those members have the Yellow Ribbon Program at pre-deployment phase. And at the local level, what the information they should be getting at this point is information about the Military Reservist Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And by looking at the numbers there, we could improve on making sure that that outreach is more comprehensive, because that really can be the difference between a Guard or reservist deploying and having their business still exist when they return.
So at places like the VBOC at Mississippi State, if a guy's a year and a half out and he's got his business plan in place, he is ready to start a small business, he or she. and they're ready to open it, are they counseled as that you may be deployed in the next year or 2 years, and what impact that has on a business? Because that's very real, and some can't be replaced. If you're a small private lawyer, your spouse or mother or father can't pick that up unless they happen to be an attorney also. So are you going through that and counseling these folks about this is the process? Because I think it's very important that they not think about that after the fact.
Congressman, you're exactly right, and we could do a sustained effort in that. Yes, we counsel on episodic basis as needed, but as you say, I don't know how many Americans are aware of how often the Guard and Reserve are called upon to depart and go serve overseas. And it is something that I need to focus on and provide more consistent and broad so that all of us can support those people as it comes.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not blaming you, but I think it's something that's devastating to a small business owner to be deployed, but we do it anyway. And so I've had friends. I notice in that the VBOX centers, the amount budget justification is lower in 16 and FY 15 and 16 than in previous years. Do you see more veterans applying for SBA loan programs in the coming years?
I expect to see more loans being applied for, Congressman, and honestly, for them to be better qualified to get those loans, yes, as we've increased our program quality and also the frequency of delivery.
And I just want to thank you again for your service. I want to thank you for your service both on the small business and also in our Air Force Reserve. And I also want to give one more shout out to Mississippi State University, which embraces our veterans like no university that I've seen, and that's top driven. They're actually having Veterans Day, and I'll be at their football game, and I hope we'll beat Alabama this weekend. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman yields back, and we want to again thank the gentleman for his service to our country as well. The gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams, who's the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this meeting today, and thank you, Ms. Carson, for your testimony and for being here and for your service. Sometimes collaboration and referrals are required in order to provide business owners with the assistance they truly need to grow and become successful. Are you aware if the veteran applicants to non-governmental training programs hosted by universities use SBA programs like SCORE or the Veterans Advantage Loan Program in conjunction with their training courses?
We are working harder than ever, Congresswoman, to make sure that we know about where we have opportunities to introduce people, wherever their program may be, to the resources available at the Small Business Administration. And yes, a bit earlier we talked about our efforts to better track referrals and make sure that they're meaningful referrals, that the person is not just given a handoff to another resource. It's the right one, and the originator follows up.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
So what differentiates private entrepreneurial training programs from those offered by the SBA's Veterans Business Outreach Centers?
It's a great question, Congresswoman, and there are many things that differentiate them, and I would say that the government doesn't have a role in every aspect and shouldn't be providing all, but I do expect our Veterans Business Outreach Centers to be aware of the other resources, whether they're private sector, academic, or other nonprofits, and to make referrals and work with those organizations and programs as required. I have an example if you would like any.
Okay, well, yeah, I would like you to share some of that with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
One place that we have found incredible connection is with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Hiring Our Heroes program. It is accepted by the Department of Defense as an element of the Transition Assistance Program. It's where hiring summits take place on military installations. They have recognized that there is a role for entrepreneurship, as self-employment is one vocation that people may choose, and we have use that as a chance for our local district offices and VBOX to participate, and we're seeing great conversion from that program, which isn't government funded, to our participation in Boots to Business and resource partners.
Okay, thank you. Pilot programs are getting much of the SBA's funding, even though metrics are lacking. Considering the wide variety of veterans programs in both the private and public sector, what can we do to focus our efforts to grow the veteran-owned business population?
A few of the topics have been addressed today. Having access to capital is important to ensure that a business gets a strong start and has the capital they need to succeed. So continuing to work as we have been, and I agree with you that measuring our performance must take place before we continue to grow programs or diversify. And that's exactly the infrastructure and work that we're doing at this time to find what is the right way. And I believe that when others see the opportunities provided by those who have taken our programs, that's an indicator of our value. Others are business starts, acquiring capital, or getting that first federal contract. And those are measures that we're paying attention to and can attribute to our programs.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Thank you very much. And the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Norman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Colonel Carlson. Thank you for your service to our country and for your service on the SBA. I would just emphasize what Congressman Lukemeyer mentioned about on regulations that don't work, calling the attention to the different agencies within the SBA. Secondly, I would say that I know on the bank board I serve, one useful tool that we did every year was a survey that was given to all the employees, and it didn't go to you. It went to an outside agency that could report back problems, duplication, a myriad of problems that were great. So I would urge you to look into that at least. And also I would say saying no for a lot of times is a great thing to do, because a lot of groups that come to the SBA, either they have not had the experience or they haven't had the seasoning to go into business and borrow money. Dodd-Frank, how has that affected lending for the SBA in your opinion?
I couldn't speak exactly to how that has affected our lending programs. I am not aware of that impact, but I would refer to my colleague in Office of Capital Access.
Okay. Secondly, I know you mentioned there were 20 outreach centers across the country. We don't have any in South Carolina. The closest is Fayetteville, which is 210 miles from our, 230 miles from the center part of the state. Has any thought been given to, re-evaluating where the service centers are, and how is that based? How do you pick where a service center either closes or does not close and opens up?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. The location, that's important, and it continues to be a challenge, as we have discussed earlier today. At this time, there are 20 Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and within the next month, there will be a funding opportunity on grants.gov where we will be recompeting the entire program, because every one of their agreements ends next year in May of 2018. The criteria that we are evaluating as we search for new Veterans Business Outreach Centers is going to be the military installations in their area that are providing transition assistance, as that is the statutory direction and first priority for Veterans Business Outreach Centers is to serve transitioning service members. We are then looking at the veteran population in total. You have highlighted one of the challenges, which is with the current resources, we are stretching as much as we can, but most VBOCs at this time are covering 3 states. We're bridging that as best we can with technology and resource referrals within our resource partner network.
Is the procedure to lease space, existing space?
We have a mix of academic hosts for the Veterans Business Outreach Centers and independent nonprofits. So if they're on an academic institution, space may be part of their indirect support, but others are leasing space. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And I would urge a lot of places, I think, I don't know how many square feet you need, but a lot of places would donate space just to get your agency in there, along with the feeling that to help a veteran out is a great thing, and they would do that.
Thank you, Congressman. That is an excellent point. And you're right, our Veterans Business Outreach Centers are spending most of their time on military installations and covering that geographic territory. I would say that real estate is not something that they need a lot of.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
brick and mortar not needed. Well, thank you again for your service, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Lawson, is a ranking member of the Subcommittee on Health and Technology, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee. This year I've had the opportunity to introduce H.R. 3345, the Veteran Job Opportunity Act, which provides tax credits for veterans who open businesses in underserved areas. I also had the opportunity to introduce a bipartisan bill with Representative represent Congressman John Rutherford, H.R. 3965, the Veteran Armed for Success Act, which provides job training for our nation veterans and workers. Work with Republican Congressman Mike Bost to introduce a bill that provide resources to help veterans become involved in the agricultural industry. Ms. Carson, I am heavily involved in the small business veteran space, and would like your thoughts on how Congress can better engage SBA to increase resources for veteran entrepreneurs.
Thank you for the opportunity to share an answer with that, sir. One is helping us ensure that the outreach is adequate, that people know about all the resources that currently exist, because there are meaningful and, in many cases, plentiful. I appreciate also your work with the agricultural opportunities for veterans. We are including, for example, U.S. Department of Agriculture information now in the Boots to Business program to ensure that there are some small business similarities in starting farms and also being in agricultural production. So that's another area where we intend to grow without creating another a separate program. So looking for those synergies and hearing about where you think we have chances to do more is extremely helpful.
Okay, and I'm gonna see if I can get in one other question. And I guess you did a little bit of it, highlighting some of the SBA and other programs at other agencies that work particularly with serving veteran entrepreneurs.
I believe, Congressman, that we are unique in what we provide to aspiring business owners, and that there is not another service that is similar to what the SBA does across the federal government. But I do know that there are some who provide services that could help them be more successful. And one example would be the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment team at the Department of Veteran Affairs, who I work closely with at both the national level and also local. It is not duplicative, but there must be meaningful referral, and to do that, I need to know what they offer. I would say the same in the Department of Defense, for example, the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. They also offer employment options for military spouses. We offer entrepreneurship. They're very different, and we collaborate with them to ensure that our differentiated service military spouses are aware of it and can participate in it, but we don't try to do the same thing as any other.
And a quick question for my time run out. Have you been able now to see more and more veterans that are coming in wanting to utilize the services that you provide?
Had a significant increase, and at this time, approximately 10% of the transitioning service member population is taking advantage of the Boots to Business program, and even more are following up through the Boots to Business Reboot, which is once a veteran is a part of their community, that's how we reach them off a military installation. Yes, it's a growing in interest, and we hope to see business success in start and sustainment.
And real quick, are you able to keep records of the amount of success that some of them had in the past and how they have helped create job opportunities in the community?
It continues to be an area where SBA can improve, and that's what we're working on, particularly with the Boots to Business program, is having a unique client identifier so that I can see, when did you first connect with SBA? When did you connect with a resource partner, get that loan, or get a federal contract? So yes, we're at the beginning of that process, and I hope to continue improving.
And finally, before I yield back, what can we do more to help you?
I'm grateful for the support we've received so far, and continuing to work on the challenges and access to capital will be most meaningful to our population, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Blum, who's the chairman of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Shabbat, and thank you, Ms. Carson, for being here today and for your service to our great nation. First question I have is, do you know what the overall labor participation force rate is for veterans?
I do not know that, sir.
Because I'm curious as to if it's higher or lower than the labor participation rate of the country in general as a whole. Are you aware of that?
The unemployment rate for veterans has been falling dramatically, and I believe we are at least at parity with non-veterans, if not more successful in the employment arena at this time.
That's good to hear. The unemployment rate has fallen amongst veterans, but we're not sure about the labor participation rate, because if they stop looking for a job, which some of them do, then they're not counted anymore, I don't believe.
That's an excellent point, sir, and I don't have that particular detail.
What are there programs in your area or in the SBA to increase the labor participation rate for veterans? Because I visited a lot of veterans shelters and volunteer centers, and some of them, you know, they haven't given up hope, but they're giving up hope, and part of it is, I think, that they're out of the labor force. And I personally think it'd be very helpful if we had programs to get them back into the labor force. Do those exist?
Yes, they do, Congressman. And one role that we play, particularly in the Boots to Business Reboot program, where, as I mentioned, we are with veterans of all eras in their communities. If self-employment isn't the right option and their next step is really to find a job, then we would refer them to the American Job Center at the through the Department of Labor. That really has been a great collaboration and a place where that's the right next step for them.
I noticed in the notes, Ms. Carson, that the Veterans Counseled fiscal year 13 was around 50,000, and in fiscal year 16, 50,000 had dropped to 19,000 and change. Can you comment on that, first of all? And secondly, how do you measure success? How do you know when you're successful? Does your department have goals? And if they do, what are the big goals?
Thank you, Congressman.
That's a three-part question, I guess.
I'll make sure I'll do my best to not miss any part of that. For the first question that you mentioned in the data, yes, over the years, I would say we have been able to increase the performance expectations of Veterans Business Outreach Centers and align them with their statutory mission, which is transition assistance and which SBA defines as training. I expect their counseling numbers to drop, as they are not going to have the long-term clients, as they are on the road at military installations providing transition assistance. So that is the differentiation and why you see that number coming down, and you do see the number of trained going up or steady, and their participation in Boots to Business increasing.
So the council number coming down is not reason for alarm.
Not at this time, because they do have a unique role in the SBA Resource Partner Network, and I'm counting on BBOX to make connections and know the right resource for a veteran when they refer them to another partner. And
Second part of the question,
second part, if I recall, sir, was how do I know
how do you measure success, goals?
Our goals are to participate, the Veteran Business Outreach Center's 100% participation in Boots to Business within their home state at a minimum. And at this time, as they're stretched multiple states, to participate at least 50% of the time out of their primary territory. And yes, we do measure things such as business starts and capital acquired, but because of the mission alignment that I just described, that's going to be tougher for that group.
And that's great you measure that, and the results have been?
The results have been increased participation in Boots to Business. So we are doing what we said we would do.
Increase, I mean, do you have that number? Do you have that statistic? How much has it improved?
An increase of 12% just in the last 3 years, and 55,000 approximately were trained in this past year by Veteran Business Outreach Centers.
And the 55,000, is that an increase as well?
I would have to look at my numbers, sir.
Because what we measure in business, we improve on, correct? So I'm glad to hear you're measuring and you have a definition of success.
It's also meaningful to not have just throughputs, and I understand that, the difference between an output and an outcome. So understanding exactly what is the right outcome when we are working with clients who are primarily at ideation and deciding whether they should even go into business or not, that continues to be an area that we need to understand better. And we're working on some program evaluation right now to decide what is the right way to measure success in a program such as that.
Very good. I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, my day has been made with my colleague entering the hearing here with her colorful hat. So it's always good to see, and it makes my day. Her hat is beautiful today, and I yield back. It's beautiful. Makes my day. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back, and I think all members on both sides have had an opportunity to question the witness, and we want to thank you for your hard work, being a veteran yourself, and also in your capacity now helping those who have worn the uniform of our country come back here. Some are starting businesses. Hopefully they'll be successful, and those who need assistance, you're there to help them, and we're there to help you. So if we can, if there's anything that you think this committee should be working on, we're happy to do that. We want to work cooperatively. We look forward to continuing to improve the programs at the SBA so they can continue to help our veterans who have paid the price to receive that help by wearing the uniform, putting their lives on the line. So to all the veterans on the committee, all in the room, to yourself, thank you for being here. And all members will have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record without objection so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.